I'm Cullen Haynes, and welcome to Live with Cullen Haynes, LawLive, episode 78. And my next guest is I've had over 20 years in law, founder and managing partner of Vend Legal. We're talking about all things deals and making the things in 2025 seem simple when it comes to business transactions and whatnot. Could you please make very welcome the one, the only, Rob Shepley, here to talk about the deal maker's edge, navigating high stakes conversations and transactions. Welcome, Rob. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Cullen. Thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate it. What's happening in your world right now? What's the go? What can you tell us?
Well, we're in a little bit of that sweet spot at the moment where business transactions can still get done before Christmas, but we're sort of getting to the point where if they're not moving ahead sort of now as quickly as they need to be, you won't get them done by Christmas, and then you're sort of looking at a wait until sort of like a February is sort of how things work. So yeah, quite busy with that at the moment, which is good.
Fantastic. And over the first Wednesday, so put your questions into Rob. We're streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, X. Thank you for joining, or if you're re-listening on the podcast, thank you. So, if you could use just film titles to describe your role, Rob, how would you do that?
Well, it'd be, I was thinking about this, the opposite of anything that was like, Suits or A Few Good Men or anything like that. I think probably the closest thing I could see is something like a Lord of the Rings type thing, a series of battles with lots of good people at the same time.
No, I like that. Something like Gandalf or Aragorn fighting the good fight. But I'd like to ask you, like a bit of a segue. What sparked your interest in corporate law and business transactions?
I do remember this. So it would have been around like 2008, I think. I was working in a small firm that did a lot of different things, and I got an opportunity to work on a sale of business, which was like a family-run fish and chip shop, so a really small operation. But got through that, and at the end of it, I thought, hey, this is actually a bit more fulfilling, engaging than doing family law or litigation or something like that. So then that's sort of the first time I really thought, hey, this business transaction is actually something I want to specialize in. And then I moved to another firm that worked in a team where I was doing much larger transactions than that. But it all came from that first fish and chip shop deal.
There you go. It happens. It all started with the fish and chips, huh? Very good. And at the moment, 2025, which sectors, in your opinion, present the most interesting, unique opportunities or challenges for you at Vend Legal?
Well, do work in a lot of different industries and sectors. Like, I suppose a challenge that it is an opportunity for people in the space that I'm in is just with the aging population around people looking to the transfer of wealth, which is something that people have been talking about for years, and it has been happening for years and will continue to happen. And like ultimately that turns into people who have built successful businesses over a long period of time, looking to get out and retire. And a key way to do that is to sell the business to someone. But we're also seeing a bit more where, depending on the type of business, buyers might be harder to come by, perhaps easier in some industries, harder in others. So we're seeing a bit more as well around alternative sales structures, where you might have an owner who thought, hey, I'd love to just cash out 100% to some corporate buyer or whoever it is and then go away. They have changed their mind because maybe that wasn't going to work out so well. Maybe that wasn't available.
Yes.
And there's some transition from within, where you might have some key employees who actually will step up and acquire the business from within. Often that's over a period of time and has a whole other range of issues and headaches to work through. But that we're seeing that a bit more now as well, where that's an alternative way for a seller to get out over a longer period, and allows them to sort of down to the next generation, which may not be a family member, right? Like just the next people who are in the business. So there's lots of things like that are really interesting.
Yeah. And I want to get that stream of thought that you were talking about in terms of, going through these acquisitions and the restructures. Like, what is the secret to getting the legal protection done properly, which is your job, right? You've got to see the rain clouds beyond the rainbows, but just getting the deal done. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yes. So, yeah, I've got some thoughts on this. And look, the one approach doesn't work every time, right? Every deal is different. One thing I find that tends to make deals work smoother and better is if you get someone like me involved as early as you can. So when I like to get involved is, if we're acting for a seller in a sale context, when they've found a buyer has been found, and maybe they've got high level terms around this is the price, and then there's going to be something like a letter of offer or a heads of agreement or something, that is the best time to get someone like me involved. And you often find clients who will think that I'll wait until I get that letter of offer sorted, which is non-binding anyway, and then we'll get the lawyer. And I tend to find like that is a mistake most of the time, because people get focused on, is this legally binding or not? Whereas, whether it is or not, it's somewhat morally binding, if that makes sense. Where if you if you put your signature to something on a piece of paper that says that you agree to do, A, B, and C, and then later on realize that, actually, now that I've thought it through, C's not going to work, it's going to need to be D. It's very hard to come back from that. And look, often you'll get parties who will just watch you. They'll be like, no, we talked about this. We agreed it would be C. We're making a D now. It's going to cost you somewhere else. So I find getting in at the right point at the start is really useful to make sure that the client isn't agreeing to something that just might not work. And often it's what's not in there rather than what's in there. The flip side is that it's a really good point that if you're proactive around going, well, look, the letter of offer might be covering, 6 or 8 key areas. There's a couple more we could put in now, which will streamline the contracts later, so that you can use that same sort of argument against the other side where you're saying, hey, look, we did talk about that. It's in the contract. And it makes it a lot easier to get things through later. The reality is it's much easier to negotiate it like a 3-page document than to try to bring something new into an 80-page document later. Definitely.
And on that note of getting the deal done and getting the legal balance right, what's the surprising skill that's helped you, Rob, or maybe an underrated talent that you have that's helped you in your career, not only in this subset of law, but just law in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and it sounds a bit stupid, but just actually being willing to explain your position on a change. So what can often happen is with any type of contract negotiation is, you'll send a contract to the other party, they'll come back and there'll be heaps of things that'll be changed, right? Like you're expecting it. But what most lawyers do is they just make the changes and send them over without the context of why they're making the change. So they sort of expect the other parties to be mind readers somewhat. And, it's no surprise that when you do that, you'll get pushback because some of the changes will be obvious as to why they're being made, but often there'll be reasons behind it that the other side won't appreciate. And so I find, simple as it is, just being actually on the front foot and saying, we've made this change, we've done it to address A, B, and C, because then what the conversation turns into is you talk about it gets the other side to think about the problem you're trying to address, the issue, and then that becomes, in the process of doing that, people acknowledge that issue, and then it's about how do we address that in the contract rather than is this a yes or no. So actually doing that is something that people often don't do, and it's quite simple to do. It'll make everyone's jobs easier.
No, well said, well said. And before we get into my next question, I want to ask, because you probably get it all the time, where does the name Vend Legal come from?
The idea was, it depends on a point in time as to whether I'm doing more sales side or more buy side work, which is really just, am I acting for a seller who's selling the business or a buyer who's buying it? And the Vend came from when I was coming up with the business plan and the reason for doing Vend Legal. My primary motivation is helping sellers sell, and the Vend is a bit of a, Vend sell is a bit of a connection there. But does depend on different point in time as to whether I'm doing more sales or more buy. But that's what it's all about. Yeah.
No, I love it. Vend Legal. Be sure to connect with Rob. If you're not on LinkedIn, please, and check out the website as well. You talk about issues all the time, which is why people engage with you, right? That's the reason these things come up. It's either a director that's done something nefarious or something else going on. Can you share a time, anonymously, of course, when a transaction maybe didn't go to plan and what you learned from it, if there's any notable ones that come up?
Yeah, look, it does happen all the time. Lots of business purchases and sales don't proceed for various reasons. And look, recently I had a couple where, there were some other issues involved, but it sort of boils down to sometimes parties just change their mind about it. So I find you learn something with every deal you do still. But often it's a case of you can't prevent the problems that might kill a deal from happening. Like a lot of the time they become sort of outside of your control. Like that example of sort of changing their mind. And the reality is, if something like that happens, then you couldn't have put a change of mind clause in a contract, itself. There's things like due diligence and so forth. But like all it is, you just have to be willing that when that problem occurs to then just address it and then negotiate an outcome that works. So I've had that recently, and we just, it was an unconditional contract, change of mind issue. We were upfront with the other side about what had happened, and then negotiated a deal where, because the reality is, if a buyer or a seller, for whatever reason, doesn't want to do a deal at the end of the day, the other side, it's no interest in forcing them, because you're not going to get what you want out of it if you're forcing someone. So it's just about, how do we resolve this? It's not a good outcome, but how do we make it get resolved and go away so people can just move on?
Makes sense. And, after these stressful situations, obviously you are human. How do you unwind after a particularly tough day in these high-stakes negotiations?
So I sort of religiously do a run 2 nights a week. But then I think the rest of my unwinding is sort of eating chips in front of the TV, I think. So
hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Kettle chips, I hope. Come on, or Pringles. What passion projects can you tell us that you're working on or you're excited about right now, Rob?
Well, outside of law, I sort of try to do things that allow me to switch off a bit more. So we get into sort of fishing a bit, and my son's really mad keen kind of young fisherman. So we've just got a secondhand boat recently. So that's going to be, I think,
fantastic.
The focus for outside of work at the moment.
Oh, great. What are you hoping to catch?
He really wants to catch eels and catfish, apparently. I don't think you want to eat either of those things, but
no. Right next to carp. That's what we want to catch. I love it. That's fantastic. And where do you see the world of corporate and commercial law evolving with the advent of AI in the next 10 years, do you think?
I think it's going to probably weed out a lot of lawyers, and the sort of ones that'll weed out are the ones that are more like they don't add enough value, I suppose, around they're more following a process, and it's a type of lawyer who, and there's lots of them around, where they'll say to the client, look, this is the situation, you've got options A, B, and C, what do you want to do? And they don't actually say, I think you should do option B because of this. Like there's a lot of lawyers who aren't really willing to provide an opinion because they're sort of trying to cover their backside or whatever a lot of the time. So I think anyone in that category, because people will be able to find the options through AI, and that role is easier to be replaced. And it's just about, I think, lawyers just being mindful of that and making sure they're giving the client that extra thing that you can't get through technology around that sort of experience, advice, and helping the client understand what they should do, not what they could do.
No, it sounds like you've been, you must have had a great mentor in your life, Rob, because you approach things quite differently. Who's been the most influential mentor or person that you've looked up to in your life that's helped get you to where you are right now, Rob?
Well, I don't think there'd be any one person. One thing I do try to do, I think you can get something you can learn something from everyone that you deal with, whether it's someone you work with or someone on the other side of a deal. And sometimes you can have a really hard negotiation and go, oh, that guy, was really painful to deal with on the other side. But there's some respect in it too, where I think you can get the good bits from people and, sort of ignore the rest. And we're all like that, we're all sort of flawed and so forth. And so I have tried to, whenever I work with people who, had skills that I didn't have or were better at other things than I was, to try to just learn a little bit from each of them and, just try to improve yourself as much as you can. And I still every deal I work on still, every time I'm getting one or two things from no matter who I'm dealing with, there's always things you can improve.
No, I dear by what you're saying there, Rob, and I think it's maybe a nice little segue into the next, question. In terms of lessons, you'd probably impart on the younger generation of lawyers and professionals, starting out in their corporate career, especially in business advisory. What would you have liked to have known, and what would you like to tell them to say, hey, this is the way it is. This is like my one little gem. So if you're listening, everyone, or rewatching, Rob's just sent in them. Have a listen up.
So I think it took me a while to work this out. If you're in any kind of role where it's contract negotiation, that the person you're actually trying to convince of your client's position is it's not about one lawyer convincing the other lawyer about it, right? And some clients think that that's how it is, and they'll say, oh, the lawyers will ring each other and sort it out. They actually won't.
No.
So what I sort of now know and took a while to obviously learn is that my job in acting for my client is to present a position that convinces the other client. So I don't worry about convincing the other lawyer on the other side of whatever I want changed.
That's a good point. Going to the other person.
And that connects with my point earlier about the explaining your position, because you might have a lawyer on the other side who just, for whatever reason, doesn't really want to cooperate with your position. But if you can explain clearly the reason that you need a change and why, and then if that message can get filtered through to their client because they'll see the changes you've made and the comments you've done, that really allows that client to go, oh, hey, actually, I might need to pull my lawyer up on this, or tell their lawyer what to do. And that's really how you get complex or tricky issues resolved in these things, is by getting the client buy-in and not just focusing on trying to convince the lawyer, because, lawyers can argue with each other forever if they want to. And it's about getting through to the real decision maker.
Really, really pick it up what you're putting down there, Rob. And on that note, is there anything you'd change in the profession right now? One thing that you'd like to see change?
I think it's probably that same point I mentioned about the lawyers making sure they're giving people actual recommendations and not just giving people options.
Yes.
And that is, I think, it maybe just comes with time and confidence and so forth, but some people never really get there. But I think if people want to future-proof themselves as much as they can, it's all about being able to give someone advice that can't be generated with AI.
Well said, and the prompts that they put in as well. No, I think there's a lot of gems that you are dispensing here, Rob. And before we get into the bonus questions, the end of the stream, one day when all is said and done, how would you like to be remembered, either personally or professionally?
I sort of like to, maybe it's not your typical lawyer. Like a lot of lawyers, are the lawyers who give lawyers a bad name. And I'd like to be one of the ones who help to give lawyers a positive name around just actually sort of helping people get things done rather than just focusing on problems. So I think that's...
You're a solution man.
Yes, yeah.
No, fantastic. And where are you hanging out the most, Rob? Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
So on my website, there's my contact details there, but a lot of the times the work I start with starts from someone just giving me a call or introduce myself over email. So the way I usually start is have an introductory call just to find out what you're trying to do and work out how I can assist with it. But really, it's a case of anyone who is thinking of selling a business, buying a business, or making an ownership change in a business, then that's the sort of work that is where my expertise is, and I'd be keen to assist.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining episode 78. High stakes deals, talking all things that, Rob. We'll bring you back for some bonus questions, my friend. Thank you so much for being illuminating, to say the least.
Thanks, Cullen. Appreciate it, mate.
Good man. And if you're a legend of law or know someone who is, and you want to be on live with Cullen Haynes, we come out every Wednesday, chatting to either a legend of law in our LawLive, Ledger Legends, accountants, or live with Cullen Haynes, open to all who are delivering value on this fine planet in the realm of business. Nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in. Proudly brought to you by Legal Home Loans. And bye for now, everyone. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Make it count. Take care. Bringing you back there, Rob, I've got a couple of questions for you. If you had to explain your role to a 6-year-old child really simply, how would you go about doing that?
I think that's an easy one for me. It's just I help people sell and buy businesses.
Easy, done. Even my 2.5-year-old Benji would understand that. I love that. How would your clients describe you in 3 words?
Hopefully good is in there somewhere, but I think pragmatic and commercial. I think that's how they would probably describe me. I hope so.
No, absolutely. And I love this last one. If you could go back in time, give yourself advice at any age, when would you go back and give yourself this advice, and what would the exact advice be?
Yeah, so I would tell myself to focus on the work you enjoy, not just the work you are good at.
I love that.
So you align the work you enjoy, which you're also good at, which is exactly why I've done this, Vend Legal. I think that's the sweet spot.
And you're doing it well, my friend. Again, if you're not connected with Rob, please do it now, remediate it now. And it's been a real privilege and joy to bring you on the show today there, Rob. Thanks for imparting your wisdom, my friend.
Thanks, Cullen. Appreciate it, mate.
All the best, everyone. Take care. Hey there, Cullen Haynes here, Australia's leading broker for lawyers on LinkedIn, and here's why I want to talk to you today about my new book, The Laws of LinkedIn, 23 ways to find your tribe, build your following, and make 7 figures on LinkedIn. When I started this journey 7 years ago, when we built, myself and Andrew, my business partner, we built Legal Home Loans from the ground up, the pain point for us was we were at a standing start. No one knew who we were. We had no money, we had no contacts, and basically we had to find a way to make our voice heard, talk to our tribe, the legal community, and build trust. And the only thing we had at our disposal was LinkedIn, which was and still is free. There's over 1 billion people on LinkedIn, and I wish when I started I had this book
with me to guide me, because I basically distilled my 23 top leading hacks that we use to build our business to a 7+ figure. And I really want to get it out there and share it with you. So if you're back